You are about to enter a realm of transformation that most people never even know exists. It's not a motivational talk. It's not a guide to popularity. This is a journey into becoming someone who does not beg for respect, but commands fear. Not through cruelty, not through volume, but through presence. Controlled, deliberate, strategic presence. Because in a world where everyone wants to be liked, the one who's not afraid to be feared holds the highest power. Machiavelli didn't write for the kind-hearted. He wrote for those who understood that if you don't shape how the world sees you, the world will shape it for you, and you'll be powerless to stop it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You've seen it, that one person who walks into the room and silence follows, not because they said anything, but because they are something. That's not magic, that's construction. Persona is a weapon, and if you don't design yours, someone else will design it for you. Machiavelli said it is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. Why? Because love is conditional. Love is emotional. Love fades when it's no longer convenient, but fear is consistent. Fear makes people think twice. Fear creates distance, and in that distance, you operate freely. Let's start by asking a brutal question. What is your current persona saying to the world? Not what you intend to project, but what people actually feel when you walk in. Do they see someone who's easily influenced, eager to please, afraid to offend? Or do they see someone who cannot be moved? Most people don't realize their persona is being controlled by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of isolation. But here's the paradox. When you stop fearing those things, the world begins to fear you. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're free. And freedom is terrifying to those still in chains. To create a persona that commands fear, we first have to kill the part of us that needs to be liked. That need is the leash around your neck. You think it's harmless. You think it's just being kind. But it's the very thing that makes you predictable, controllable, and weak in the eyes of predators. Machiavelli didn't say to be cruel. He said to be calculated. A prince must learn how not to be good, he wrote, and to use this knowledge or not to use it according to necessity. This is not about morality. This is about choice, the ability to be sharp when needed, to cut when required, to disappear when it serves you. So how do we build this persona? It starts with silence. Most people talk too much. They overshare, they reveal their insecurities, their dreams, their doubts, all in the name of authenticity. But Machiavellian authenticity is different. It's measured, it's selective. You show people only what serves your strategy. The rest stays locked away. Every word, every look, every movement is intentional. You're not trying to be understood, you're trying to be unreadable, because fear doesn't come from what's known, it comes from what's unknown. People would become a mystery, not by hiding, but by holding. Holding your reactions, holding your emotions, holding your intentions. A mysterious person is a powerful person because no one knows how to prepare for them. They can't anticipate your next move. They can't manipulate you because they can't read you. And when people can't read you, they become cautious. And caution is the seed of fear. Machiavelli would remind us, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. That means your image, your presence matters more than your actual power. People fear what they perceive as power, so give them something to perceive. Let your posture speak for you. Let your silence do the talking. Learn to pause before you respond. Let them wonder if you agree, if you're angry, if you're even listening. That wondering creates discomfort, and discomfort gives you control. Most people rush to fill silence because they're nervous. Don't. Make others fill the silence. Let them expose themselves while you reveal nothing. That's power. That's persona. Now let's talk about your eyes. Your gaze is a weapon. Most people don't know how to use it. They look away too quickly. They scan the room. They look down. But someone who commands fear locks in. Not aggressively, just calmly. Like a predator who's already decided the outcome. Your gaze should say, I already know how this ends. You don't need to raise your voice. Your stillness speaks volumes. And the more others react, the more powerful you become. But even persona isn't enough without reputation. Machiavelli wrote, a prince ought to inspire fear in such a way that if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. That's the balance, fear without hatred. You achieve that by being fair but firm. You don't lash out. You strike only when it's necessary, and when you do, you make sure it's felt. You don't fight often, but when you fight, you finish it, and people remember. That memory becomes part of your legend, and your legend becomes your leverage. You also need to master the power of distance. Most people are too available, too accessible, too eager to be included. But the more people see you, the less they value you. You must create absence. Disappear when they expect you to be present. Speak less than they expect you to. This disorients people. It makes them feel like they never fully have you. And nothing is more valuable than what feels just out of reach. So that's how you create psychological scarcity, and scarcity breeds significance. Still, building a persona that commands fear isn't about theatrics, it's about consistency. You don't get to be ice cold one day and emotional the next. You don't get to play the villain in the morning and the victim by night. That inconsistency makes you weak. You must decide on your character and live it every day, in every room, in every interaction. And yes, that takes energy, but it also gives you something in return. Control, the ability to shape how others move around you, the ability to end a conflict before it begins, because your presence says you won't tolerate disrespect. But here's the deeper truth. The persona you create must come from an identity you own. If you pretend to be powerful but still feel small inside, people will sense it. Authentic persona is not an act, it's an alignment. You believe in your strength. You believe in your boundaries. You don't just project control, you embody it. And that embodiment is what makes people pause before they cross you, because they feel that you don't bluff. You don't bark, you simply decide. So ask yourself now, how much of your current persona is truly yours? And how much of it was shaped by fear, by compromise, by a lifetime of trying not to offend? If you could strip all that away, what kind of person would rise from the ashes? Would they be feared? Or would they still be begging to be liked? The world doesn't need more likable people, it needs more immovable people. People whose presence shifts the room, people who don't fold under pressure, people who don't chase but attract. That's who you're becoming. Not a tyrant, not a monster, but a sovereign force. A presence so defined, so deliberate, so composed, that fear becomes the natural response, and you don't need to announce it. They'll feel it the moment you walk in. Now that we've stripped away the illusion of needing to be liked, we begin the real construction. The architecture of fear is not built in rage, it's built in restraint. And Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He saw that those who chased affection were always at the mercy of those who didn't. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. That means your external world must be designed for impact, even if your internal world is still being forged. What people see in you must make them pause, not because they understand you, but because they don't. The first layer of persona is not personality, it's energy. People respond to energy long before they respond to logic. If you walk into a room with the energy of someone who has nothing to prove, no need to please, no interest in small talk or validation, you immediately create tension, and tension is the soil where fear grows. Not because you've done anything hostile, but because others are used to being prioritized. Their comfort, their egos, their expectations. When you no longer play into that, they feel something missing, and they call that discomfort intimidation. This is why detachment is essential. You cannot command fear if you are still emotionally entangled in how people perceive you. You must become immune to praise and indifferent to criticism. That doesn't mean you become heartless. It means you become unshakable. Because every time you react emotionally, you leak power. And Machiavelli would tell you, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Who surrounds you? Are they people who reinforce your persona or people who dilute it? Let's speak plainly. If you want to be feared, you can't be predictable. Predictability is a weakness. It makes you easy to read, easy to plan against, easy to manipulate. You must become someone whose next move is never obvious. That doesn't mean being erratic. It means being strategic. You respond, not react. You plan 3 moves ahead while others are still processing the first. You say less than necessary. And when you do speak, it's surgical. The more people expect your behavior, the less they respect your power. Surprise is a psychological weapon. Use it, and don't confuse volume with power. The loudest person is rarely the most dangerous. It's the quiet one, the one who watches, the one whose silence feels like judgment, the one who doesn't need to raise their voice because their eyes already said everything. You must learn to speak with your presence, your stillness, your posture, your timing. Fear is not created through shouting, it's created through control. When you're in full control of your energy, you become impossible to provoke. And that is terrifying to those who rely on chaos to manipulate others. You also need to understand the value of ambiguity. Don't always explain yourself. Don't always clarify your intentions. Let people wonder. Let them speculate. Doubt is a destabilizing force in the human mind. When someone isn't sure what you're thinking, they become cautious. Caution slows down aggression. Caution makes people hesitate before taking a shot at you. And hesitation in a power game is a fatal flaw. Machiavelli said, "A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who have been supreme. And the great ones always operated with mystery. They never revealed their entire hand." But let's go deeper. Fear doesn't only come from what you project. It comes from what you withhold. You must become the kind of person who isn't afraid to walk away from people, from deals, from relationships, from conversations. The ability to say no to disappear, to detach. That is power in its purest form, because most people are trapped by their need to belong, trapped by their fear of being alone, trapped by their longing for approval. And when you show them that you're not trapped by anything, that you can walk away from everything at any time, they fear you. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're free. Now ask yourself, what holds you emotionally hostage? Who can still trigger a reaction from you? Whose opinion still influences your choices? Until you sever that connection, your persona will always have cracks. And cracks are where manipulation leaks in. You must become whole. Not perfect, not invincible, but emotionally sovereign. You don't need people's understanding. You don't need their applause. You need only your mission and the discipline to stay aligned with it. You also must learn to punish correctly. This is where most people fail. They either overreact or do nothing. But Machiavelli taught that punishment must be measured and, most importantly, memorable. He said injuries should be inflicted all at once, so that their ill savor, being less lasting, may offend less. Benefits should be granted little by little, so that they may be better enjoyed. When someone crosses your line, you don't need to explode. You need to act with precision, finality, and silence. No second chances, no drawn-out drama, just removal or distance, or a consequence that speaks louder than any threat. This is why your values must be non-negotiable. Fear is not sustained by intimidation alone, it's sustained by standard. When people know you have lines that will never be crossed again and consequences that will always follow disrespect, they move differently around you. They weigh their words, they measure their tone, they become cautious. And this caution keeps your world clean. It filters out the manipulators and attracts those who respect discipline. But here's the twist. A persona that commands fear doesn't repel loyalty. It amplifies it. Because people want to follow strength. People want to feel protected. People want to align with someone who doesn't fold under pressure. When your presence communicates that you are not a puppet of emotion, but a master of discipline, those who are lost in chaos will gravitate toward you. Not to challenge you, but to be led by you. And this is where true power begins. Not in domination, but in direction. You become the one who defines the terms, who shapes the space, who controls the tempo. But only if your inner world matches your outer projection. If you build a persona of power, but still think like a servant, you will be exposed. This is why solitude is necessary. You need time alone, not just to reflect, but to rebuild, to train your thoughts, to observe your patterns, to remove every trace of emotional dependency. And in that silence, you'll discover something extraordinary. That fear, when used correctly, is not destruction, it's structure. It organizes the world around you. It creates boundaries where none existed. It gives you space to operate without noise, without nonsense, without interruption. So now, ask yourself the deepest question yet. If everyone in your life feared disappointing you, how much cleaner, sharper, and more peaceful would your world become? What would that allow you to build, to become, to experience? You already know the answer. When you reach this level of internal mastery, the mechanics of fear shift from being something you project to something you embody. You no longer have to try to be intimidating. You no longer have to posture. You simply exist in a state of such calm, such calculated restraint, such unwavering confidence that people feel your energy before you say a word. And that energy says, I do not need your permission, your approval, or your affection. I control my world. I decide who enters. I decide what stays. Machiavelli would call this the ultimate form of power, not the kind that comes from armies or wealth, but from presence. Because presence is the battlefield before the conversation even begins. Let's go even deeper. A persona that commands fear must be rooted in principle, not ego. If it's ego, it will crack under pressure. Ego needs recognition. Ego needs validation. Ego needs applause. But principle needs nothing. Principle stands even when no one else understands it. And this is important. People don't fear you. They fear what you represent. They fear the boundary. They fear the consequence. They fear the silence. They fear the unpredictability. And most of all, they fear that you don't need them. That kind of detachment exposes everyone who relies on control. Machiavelli said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." That means your identity must carry more weight than your position. You don't need a crown to be royal. You don't need a title to be influential. You don't need a following to be feared. You need one thing: consistency. The moment you start justifying weakness, apologizing for strength, or explaining your standards, you lose control. And control is the currency of fear. Those who can't control themselves will never be respected. Those who can control themselves don't even need to ask for it. This is why emotional discipline is everything. You cannot command fear if you are still emotionally impulsive. You cannot command fear if you still seek closure, validation, or understanding from others. You must become emotionally self-sufficient. That means if someone betrays you, you do not chase. If someone disrespects you, you do not argue. If someone doubts you, you do not explain. You simply withdraw. You remove your energy, your presence, your access. And that removal becomes the punishment. Because once you've built a persona that commands fear, your absence hurts more than your presence ever could. But persona is not just about what you subtract. It's also about what you build. You must embody certainty, not arrogance, not delusion, but grounded, unmovable certainty. Certainty in your values, certainty in your path, certainty in your silence. People fear certainty because it forces them to confront their own confusion. When you speak with precision, when you act without hesitation, when your yes means yes and your no means no, you become a mirror. And most people hate what they see in that mirror. They hate their own inconsistency, their own emotional chaos, their own lack of discipline. And instead of owning it, they label you as intimidating. That is why you must never dilute your energy to make others comfortable. The more you shrink, the more they take. The more you explain, the less they respect. The more you justify, the less they listen. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be undeniable. You are not here to be accessible. You are here to be unforgettable. And unforgettable people are rarely liked by everyone, but they are respected. And respect lasts longer than applause. It echoes long after the moment is gone. At this level, you'll begin to notice something strange. People will start seeking your approval, even as they pretend not to care. Your silence will make them anxious. Your disinterest will make them chase. And your standards will make them either rise or leave. This is the filtering power of a feared persona. It cleans your environment. It removes the weak, the manipulative, the opportunistic, not because you pushed them out, but because they couldn't survive the clarity of your presence. Machiavelli said, "The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar." That means your appearance, your emotional posture, your tone, your aura must be designed, not fake, designed. You don't show up emotionally naked, you show up armored in clarity. And your armor isn't coldness, it's sovereignty. It's the refusal to be pulled into games, into gossip, into drama, into anything that distracts you from your mission. The person who commands fear is not obsessed with being feared. They're obsessed with staying aligned. And that obsession creates the persona. But here's the paradox. The deeper you go into this transformation, the less you care if you're feared, because it's no longer about others. It's about you. It's about becoming someone you respect, someone you trust, someone you can depend on when everything else collapses. And from that place of self-respect, you radiate a kind of power that words can't explain. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's just there, and people instinctively recognize it. So now the question becomes, what kind of legacy are you building? Because fear, when used correctly, is not a weapon of destruction, it's a tool of preservation. It protects your peace, it protects your mission, it protects your values, but only when it's built on discipline, not ego. Only when it's backed by principle, not performance. You don't need to dominate others. You don't need to manipulate. You don't need to threaten. You just need to be so deeply aligned with who you are that others feel it. And in that feeling, they either rise or retreat. Either way, you win. Because your path is no longer dictated by emotion, it's dictated by intent. So ask yourself one final piercing question. If I truly became the person who feared nothing, not rejection, not judgment, not abandonment, what level of power would I finally unlock? Not just in the world, but in myself. Because that is the persona that commands fear, and it can be you.